The steam from Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun's coffee cup caught the morning light, streaming through the mess hall windows as she watched the woman they all called Coffee Girl navigate between tables with practiced efficiency. There was something about Maya Rodriguez that didn't quite fit, though Sarah couldn't put her finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way she moved through the crowded dining area of Naval Station Coronado without ever bumping into anyone, or how her eyes seemed to catalog every face, every movement, every detail with the kind of awareness that went beyond simple customer service. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya had been serving coffee and meals at the base for 3 months now, hired through a civilian contractor after the previous food service company had lost their contract. She was quiet, polite, and forgettable in the way that made her blend seamlessly into the background of naval life. At 28, she had the unremarkable appearance of someone who had learned that being noticed wasn't always an advantage. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a regulation-compliant ponytail, and her civilian uniform of khaki pants and navy polo shirt hung loose enough to hide whatever shape lay beneath. She wore no jewelry, no makeup, and spoke in the kind of soft voice that made people lean in slightly to hear her, though most didn't bother. To the hundreds of sailors, officers, and civilian contractors who passed through the mess hall daily, she was just part of the furniture. The morning rush at Naval Station Coronado's main mess hall began at 05:00 hours sharp, and Maya Rodriguez had already been working for an hour, preparing coffee urns and checking inventory before the first wave of hungry sailors descended on the dining facility. The industrial kitchen hummed with the familiar sounds of breakfast preparation, but Maya moved through it all with a silence that had become her trademark. Petty Officer First Class James Morton was among the first to arrive, his dress blues crisp despite the early hour. He approached the coffee station where Maya stood behind the counter, steam rising from the fresh pots she'd just finished brewing. Her movements were economical, efficient, each gesture serving a purpose without wasted motion. "Large black coffee," Morton said without looking at her, already reaching for his wallet while scrolling through messages on his phone. Maya filled a large cup with the dark roast he preferred, added a lid, and placed it on the counter between them. The entire interaction took less than 30 seconds, and Morton walked away without acknowledgement, lost in whatever crisis required his attention at dawn. This scene repeated itself dozens of times each morning. Officers and enlisted personnel alike would approach Maya's station, place their orders, receive their beverages, and move on with their lives without giving her a second thought. She had become part of the background noise of naval life, as familiar and unremarkable as the sound of reveille or the sight of ships in the harbor. Chief Petty Officer Lisa Park had been observing the coffee operation for weeks, not out of particular interest in Maya, but because efficient mess hall operations were part of her administrative responsibilities. What she noticed wasn't anything dramatic or concerning, just small details that suggested competence beyond what the job required. Maya arrived early and stayed late, but never claimed overtime. She anticipated rushes before they happened, having extra coffee ready when ships returned from exercises or when briefings let out. She remembered drink preferences without being told, had orders ready before regular customers finished speaking, and somehow managed to keep her station clean and organized even during the busiest periods. "She's good at her job," Park mentioned to Senior Chief Martinez during one of their routine discussions about base operations. "Quiet, professional, no complaints from customers or staff. The contractor made a good hire." Senior Chief Martinez barely looked up from his paperwork. "As long as the coffee's hot and there are no problems, I don't need details. Civilian contractors are their own responsibility." This attitude was typical throughout the base hierarchy. Maya performed her duties competently, caused no disruptions, and required no supervision. In a military environment where problems demanded immediate attention and solutions needed constant oversight, someone who simply did their job without complications was easily overlooked. The mess hall served nearly 2,000 people daily across 3 shifts, and Maya had learned the rhythms of each group. The early morning crowd consisted mainly of senior officers and administrative staff who needed caffeine before their first meetings. The mid-morning rush brought in sailors between training sessions and watch rotations. The afternoon shift drew people looking for something to help them through the last hours of their workday. Each group had its own character, its own pace, its own expectations. Maya adapted to all of them seamlessly, adjusting her service style to match the mood and urgency of each customer. With hurried officers, she was quick and efficient. With tired sailors coming off watch, she was patient and understanding. With nervous junior personnel, she was quietly encouraging without overstepping boundaries. Ensign David Kim had been assigned to the base fresh from the Naval Academy, and everything about military life still felt new and slightly overwhelming. The mess hall represented one of the few places where he could slow down, grab a cup of coffee, and try to process whatever he'd learned during his latest training session. Maya had noticed his uncertainty from his first day, the way he hesitated at the counter, unsure of protocol or expectations. She'd started having his preferred coffee ready when she saw him approaching, a small gesture that saved him the awkwardness of fumbling through his order while other customers waited behind him. "Thank you," Kim said one morning, accepting his usual medium coffee with cream. "I appreciate you remembering what I like." Maya nodded with a slight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's no trouble. Have a good day, sir." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The interaction was brief and professional, but Kim walked away with the feeling that she'd seen something in his uncertainty, had recognized a need and quietly addressed it without making him feel inadequate. It was a level of situational awareness that went beyond simple customer service, though he couldn't articulate why it seemed significant. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun had been watching these small interactions accumulate over weeks, not because she suspected anything unusual about Maya, but because she'd developed a habit of observing people and patterns during her own coffee breaks. As the base intelligence officer, situational awareness had become second nature, and something about Maya's behavior pattern didn't quite align with what Chun expected from civilian food service personnel. It wasn't anything she could quantify or report. Maya followed all protocols, maintained professional boundaries, and performed her duties exactly as specified in the contractor agreement. But there was a quality to her alertness, a way she tracked movement and positioned herself in the serving area that suggested training beyond hospitality management. Chun had served long enough to recognize the difference between someone who was naturally observant and someone who had been trained to maintain awareness of their environment. Maya fell into the latter category, though nothing in her employment file suggested military or security background. The employment file itself was unremarkable. Maya Rodriguez, 28 years old, previous experience in food service and customer relations, excellent references from civilian employers, clean background check, no red flags or concerns. She'd been hired through Pinnacle Dining Services, a contractor that provided food service personnel to military installations throughout the region. Her application listed an address in a modest apartment complex 15 minutes from the base, no emergency contacts beyond a sister in Phoenix, and work history that showed steady employment, but nothing that would explain the subtle indicators Chien had noticed. On paper, Maya was exactly what she appeared to be, a competent civilian employee doing her job professionally and efficiently. The contradiction between the unremarkable file and Chun's observations might have remained just an interesting puzzle. If not for the morning, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morrison decided to test the new coffee blend the contractor had introduced. Morrison was not known for his patience with food service operations. A career infantry officer who'd recently transferred to an administrative position at the naval base, he approached most non-military personnel with barely concealed irritation at their lack of military bearing and precision. Maya had served him coffee dozens of times, always professionally, always efficiently, but never in a way that earned his particular attention. On this morning, Morrison approached the counter during the busy mid-morning rush, his expression already suggesting that whatever he was about to order would somehow be inadequate or disappointing. Maya looked up from the espresso machine she was cleaning, made eye contact, and waited for his request. "I want to try that new blend everyone's talking about," Morrison said, his tone suggesting that the coffee had better live up to whatever reputation it had earned. "Medium black, and it better be fresh." Maya reached for a clean cup and moved toward the appropriate coffee urn, but Morrison continued talking, apparently expecting some kind of detailed explanation about the coffee's origin, roasting process, or flavor profile. When Maya simply filled his cup with the requested blend and placed it on the counter, Morrison's irritation became more pronounced. "That's it," he said, loud enough to draw attention from other customers. "No explanation of what makes this blend special. No description of the flavor notes." The contractor briefing said this was supposed to be premium coffee service. Maya maintained her professional composure despite the growing audience of sailors and officers who had paused their own transactions to watch the interaction. "The new blend is a medium roast with chocolate and caramel notes, sir. It's freshly brewed this morning. If you'd like to try it before purchasing, I can provide a sample." Her response was polite, informative, and exactly appropriate for the situation, but Morrison seemed determined to find fault with something. "I don't need a sample. I need someone who understands customer service and can provide information without being asked." This is exactly the kind of lazy civilian attitude that makes contracting out these services a mistake. The mess hall had grown noticeably quieter as Morrison's voice rose, and Maya could feel the uncomfortable attention of dozens of military personnel who were trying to determine whether they should intervene or simply wait for the situation to resolve itself. She remained calm, her expression neutral, her posture professional. "I apologize if my service didn't meet your expectations, sir," Maya said quietly. "The coffee is $3. Would you like me to prepare something different?" Morrison took the cup, tasted the coffee, and grudgingly admitted that it was acceptable before walking away with continued muttering about civilian contractors and declining service standards. The incident lasted less than 5 minutes, but it left Maya feeling exposed in a way she hadn't experienced since starting work at the base. Chief Petty Officer Park, who had witnessed the entire exchange, approached Maya's station after Morrison left. "Don't let him get to you," she said quietly. "Lieutenant Colonel Morrison finds fault with everything. His complaints don't reflect on your performance." Maya nodded her appreciation for the support, but the interaction had reminded her why she preferred to remain invisible, why she'd chosen a position that typically attracted minimal attention from military personnel. Being noticed, even for something as minor as a customer service complaint, was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid. The incident with Morrison might have been forgotten within days, if not for the way it changed how certain people looked at Maya's work. Lieutenant Commander Chun, already curious about the subtle indicators she'd observed, began paying closer attention to how Maya handled difficult situations and managed the social dynamics of the mess hall environment. What Chun noticed was that Maya's response to Morrison's aggression had been textbook conflict de-escalation. She'd acknowledged his concerns without accepting blame, offered alternatives without appearing defensive, and maintained professional composure under pressure. These weren't just natural personality traits or good customer service training. They were specific skills that suggested education in crisis management and social psychology. More interesting was how Maya had positioned herself during the confrontation. Rather than stepping back or creating distance, she'd maintained her ground while subtly angling her body to keep both Morrison and the exit routes in her peripheral vision. Her hands had remained relaxed but ready, and her voice had stayed calm without becoming submissive. Shun had seen similar behavior patterns in security personnel, diplomatic staff, and intelligence operatives. People trained to handle confrontation while maintaining awareness of their environment and multiple exit strategies. It was professional-level situational management disguised as simple customer service. The morning after the Morrison incident, Maya arrived at work to find that word of the confrontation had spread throughout the base's administrative networks. Several officers made a point of being especially polite during their coffee orders, as if to compensate for their colleagues' behavior. Others seemed to study her more carefully, perhaps trying to understand what had prompted Morrison's outburst. Ensign Kim approached her station with obvious concern. "I heard about yesterday," he said quietly while she prepared his usual order. "I hope you know that not everyone here shares that attitude. Most of us appreciate the work you do." Maya handed him his coffee with the same slight smile she'd shown before. "Thank you, sir. I understand that people have different expectations. It's not a problem." But it was becoming a problem, though not in the way Kim or the other sympathetic customers imagined. The increased attention meant that more people were watching Maya work, noticing details about her behavior that had previously gone unobserved. She could feel the weight of additional scrutiny, the sense that her carefully maintained invisibility was beginning to erode. Petty Officer Second Class Rachel Torres had been assigned to conduct a routine inspection of food service operations, part of the base's ongoing quality assurance program. The inspection was administrative rather than investigative, focused on cleanliness, efficiency, and compliance with health and safety regulations, rather than personnel evaluation. Maya's work area passed inspection easily. Her station was immaculately organized, her procedures followed all required protocols, and her interaction with customers during the inspection period was professional and efficient. Torres noted these observations in her report without particular comment, since competent performance was expected rather than exceptional. However, Torres also noted something that struck her as unusual, though not necessarily problematic. During the busiest part of the morning rush, when the mess hall was crowded with personnel from multiple units, Maya had demonstrated an ability to track and manage complex order sequences while maintaining awareness of everything happening in her immediate area. She'd noticed when a sailor dropped his wallet 3 tables away, had alerted him before he left the building. She'd observed when 2 junior officers at opposite ends of the dining area had been trying to get each other's attention, and had quietly mentioned to one of them that his colleague was looking for him. She'd kept track of which customers were still waiting for orders, which were ready to pay, and which needed additional service, all while maintaining efficient operations at her own station. This level of multitasking and environmental awareness exceeded what Torres expected from food service personnel, though it wasn't inappropriate or concerning. Maya was simply very good at her job, perhaps exceptionally so. Torres included this observation in her report as a positive note about contractor performance, rather than a red flag requiring investigation. The inspection report made its way through administrative channels without generating particular interest from senior staff. Positive evaluations of contractor personnel were routine, and Maya's competent performance was exactly what the base command expected from their food service provider. The report was filed, and operations continued normally. But Lieutenant Commander Chen had requested a copy of all contractor evaluations as part of her routine intelligence gathering responsibilities, and Torres's observations about Maya's exceptional situational awareness caught her attention. Combined with her own observations over the previous months, the inspection report added another piece to a puzzle that was becoming increasingly interesting. Shun had served long enough to trust her instincts about people, and her instincts suggested that Maya Rodriguez was more than she appeared to be. Not necessarily dangerous or problematic, but certainly more trained and experienced than her employment file indicated. The question was whether this discrepancy represented a security concern or simply an overqualified employee taking whatever work was available. The answer to that question would come sooner than Chin expected, though from a direction none of them anticipated. Admiral Rebecca Stone had commanded naval special warfare units before taking her current position overseeing West Coast naval installations, and her experience with special operations personnel had taught her to recognize certain behavioral patterns and physical indicators that civilian observers might miss. She'd been visiting Naval Station Coronado for routine inspections and briefings, activities that brought her into contact with various base personnel, including civilian contractors. Maya had served the Admiral coffee twice during her 3-day visit, interactions that were brief and professional. Maya had demonstrated the same competent service she provided to all customers, but something about her bearing had caught Stone's attention. There was a quality to her alertness and composure that suggested military training, though nothing in her demeanor or conversation indicated former service. Stone had encountered similar contradictions before, usually involving former special operations personnel who had transitioned to civilian life but retained the mental habits and physical conditioning of their military training. The indicators were subtle but recognizable to someone with experience in the special warfare community. Maya's posture suggested physical fitness beyond what her job required. Her eye contact was direct but not challenging, confident but not aggressive. She moved with economy of motion that spoke of efficiency training, and she maintained situational awareness that went beyond customer service requirements. None of these indicators were concerning, but they were noticeable to someone who knew what to look for. On her final morning at the base, Admiral Stone decided to conduct an informal test of her observations. She approached Maya's coffee station during a relatively quiet period, ordered a complex drink that required multiple preparation steps, and engaged in casual conversation while Maya worked. "You seem to have a good handle on operations here," Stone commented while Maya prepared her cappuccino. "How long have you been working at this base?" 3 months, ma'am," Maya replied, her tone respectful but not overly formal. "It's a good assignment. The staff is professional and the work is steady." Stone watched Maya's hand movements as she operated the espresso machine, noting the precision and efficiency that characterized everything she did. "Have you worked on military installations before?" "No, ma'am. This is my first assignment with a defense contractor." The answer was truthful as far as it went, but Stone detected the careful phrasing that suggested there might be more to the story. Maya had said this was her first assignment with a defense contractor, not her first time on a military installation. The distinction might be meaningless, but in Stone's experience, people who had something to hide often chose their words very carefully. "Well, you're doing excellent work," Stone said, accepting her finished cappuccino. "The base is fortunate to have competent people in support positions." Maya nodded her thanks for the compliment, but Stone noticed that she didn't seem particularly pleased by the attention. If anything, she appeared slightly uncomfortable with the praise, as if recognition was something she preferred to avoid rather than seek. This response solidified Stone's suspicions that Maya had a background she wasn't sharing, though the Admiral couldn't determine whether that background was relevant to base security or simply personal history that Maya preferred to keep private. Either way, it warranted some discreet investigation. Before leaving the base, Admiral Stone made a point of speaking privately with Lieutenant Commander Chun about her observations regarding civilian contractor personnel. She didn't mention Maya specifically, but she did emphasize the importance of maintaining awareness of all personnel who had access to base facilities, regardless of their official status or clearance level. Sometimes the most important information comes from people we don't think of as information sources, Stone told Chun during their final briefing. Food service staff, maintenance personnel, administrative contractors, they see and hear things that might be significant. It's worth knowing who these people really are. Chun understood the implication. Admiral Stone had noticed something about one of the civilian contractors that warranted closer attention. Given Chun's own observations about Maya over the previous months, she was fairly certain she knew which contractor had caught the Admiral's interest. After Stone's departure, Chun began making discreet inquiries about Maya's background, not through official channels that might generate unwanted attention, but through informal conversations with other personnel who had interacted with her. What she discovered was a consistent pattern of competent, professional service, combined with subtle indicators that Maya had training and experience beyond what her EMPLOYMENT file suggested. The puzzle was becoming more complex, but it was also becoming more intriguing. Maya Rodriguez was clearly more than she appeared to be, but whether that was significant for base security remained to be determined. Chun decided to continue her observations while beginning a more thorough background investigation through appropriate intelligence channels. The investigation would reveal information that would transform everyone's understanding of the quiet woman who served coffee in the mess hall, but that revelation was still several weeks away. For now, Maya continued her daily routine, unaware that her carefully maintained anonymity was beginning to unravel. Summer at Naval Station Coronado brought longer days and increased training activity as multiple units conducted exercises that filled the base with personnel from other installations. The mess hall operated at maximum capacity for extended hours, and Maya found herself working longer shifts to accommodate the increased demand for food service. The heavier workload might have been an opportunity for Maya to demonstrate her capabilities more openly, but instead she seemed to work even harder to maintain her low profile. She arrived earlier, stayed later, and somehow managed to serve twice as many customers without appearing rushed or overwhelmed. Her efficiency during the busy period was remarkable, but she seemed determined not to let anyone notice just how remarkable it was. Petty Officer Torres, conducting another routine inspection during the peak activity period, watched Maya coordinate beverage service for a line of 60 sailors without losing track of individual orders or making a single mistake. The level of concentration and organizational skill required for this performance was extraordinary, but Maya made it look effortless. "How do you keep track of all those orders?" Torres asked during a brief lull in service. Maya wiped down her work's surface while she answered, "Practice and attention to detail. Once you learn the patterns, it becomes automatic." The answer was truthful but incomplete. Maya was demonstrating memory and processing capabilities that went well beyond normal customer service training. She was tracking multiple complex orders simultaneously while maintaining awareness of her environment and managing customer flow through the serving area. These were advanced cognitive skills that suggested specialized training. Torres included this observation in her follow-up inspection report, noting that Maya's performance during high-stress periods exceeded normal expectations for civilian food service personnel. The report was routine administrative documentation, but it provided additional evidence of Maya's exceptional capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Chun read Torres's report with growing certainty that her suspicions about Maya were justified. The accumulating evidence suggested someone with advanced training in stress management, situational awareness, and complex task coordination. These were skills associated with military special operations, intelligence work, or other specialized fields that required peak performance under pressure. Chun's discreet background investigation had yielded limited results through normal channels. Maya's official records showed exactly what they had shown before: competent civilian employee with appropriate qualifications and clean background checks. But Chun had also submitted a request through intelligence channels for any information about Maya Rodriguez that might not appear in standard employment screening. The response to that request would arrive the following week, and it would contain information that would explain everything Chun had observed about Maya's behavior, patterns, and capabilities. But it would also raise new questions about why someone with Maya's background was working as a food service contractor on a naval base. Until then, Maya continued her work with the same quiet competence that had characterized her performance. From the beginning, she served coffee, managed customer flow, maintained her work area, and somehow managed to be exactly where she needed to be whenever someone needed assistance. The summer rush brought new challenges, but she met them all with the same unflappable professionalism that had become her trademark. What Maya didn't realize was that her very success at maintaining a low profile was making her increasingly visible to the people who mattered most. Her attempts to avoid attention were actually drawing attention from the military personnel, who were trained to notice when someone was trying very hard not to be noticed. The revelation that would change everything was only days away, triggered by a simple accident that would expose the truth Maya had been working so carefully to conceal. When it came, it would transform not only how everyone saw her, but how they understood the nature of service, sacrifice, and the hidden warriors who walked among them unrecognized. The first Tuesday of August brought unexpected challenges to Naval Station Coronado when the base's primary air conditioning system failed during the hottest week of the summer. The mess hall, normally kept at a comfortable temperature for both food safety and customer comfort, became stifling as afternoon temperatures climbed to triple digits. Maya had been working since dawn, and by noon the heat in the kitchen area had become nearly unbearable. The industrial coffee machines generated additional warmth, and the steam from constant beverage preparation created a humid environment that made every movement feel labored. Most of the civilian contractors had requested permission to modify their uniforms or take additional breaks, but Maya continued working in her standard khaki pants and navy polo shirt. By 2 in the afternoon, even the most dedicated personnel were showing signs of heat stress. The base command had authorized relaxed uniform standards for the day, allowing military personnel to remove outer layers and civilian contractors to dress more appropriately for the conditions. Maya had watched other food service workers switch to lighter clothing or roll up their sleeves, but she remained fully covered despite the obvious discomfort. Senior Chief Martinez approached the coffee station during the peak afternoon heat, his own uniform showing signs of the oppressive temperature. "Rodriguez, you need to take a break. Nobody should be working in these conditions without relief." Maya looked up from the iced coffee she was preparing, her face flushed but her composure unchanged. "I'm managing fine, Senior Chief. The afternoon rush is almost over." Martinez studied her carefully, noting that while she was clearly affected by the heat, she wasn't showing the severe distress that would require immediate intervention. Still, her dedication to maintaining full uniform coverage seemed unnecessarily extreme given the circumstances. "The base has authorized modified uniforms for all personnel today," he said. "There's no requirement to maintain standard dress codes when environmental conditions create health risks." Maya nodded acknowledgement, but made no move to adjust her clothing. "I appreciate the information, Senior Chief. I'll keep that in mind if conditions become unmanageable." Her response was polite but firm, clearly indicating that she had no intention of modifying her uniform regardless of the heat. Martinez accepted her decision with some puzzlement, but he respected her right to maintain whatever dress standards she felt were appropriate. What Martinez didn't understand was that Maya's reluctance to adjust her clothing had nothing to do with professionalism or dress code compliance. Hidden beneath her conservative uniform were markings that would instantly change how everyone on the base perceived her, markings that represented a part of her life she wasn't prepared to share with her current colleagues. The afternoon heat continued to intensify, and by 3 o'clock the mess hall had become nearly empty as personnel sought cooler environments for their breaks. Only essential operations continued, and Maya found herself working alone at the coffee station for the first time since starting her assignment at the base. The solitude provided temporary relief from the constant awareness she maintained during busy periods, allowing her to focus entirely on managing the environmental challenges without worrying about maintaining her carefully constructed image. She methodically prepared iced beverages and cold brewing supplies for the evening shift, working efficiently despite the oppressive temperature. Admiral Stone had returned to Naval Station Coronado for an unscheduled inspection related to the base's response to the equipment failures. Her visit included stops at various facilities to assess how personnel were adapting to the challenging conditions and whether additional support was needed. The mess hall was among her stops, partly because food service operations were essential for maintaining morale during difficult periods, and partly because she wanted another opportunity to observe the civilian contractor who had caught her attention during her previous visit. Stone entered the nearly empty dining facility and found Maya working alone at the coffee station, her movements steady and efficient despite the obvious heat stress. The Admiral approached the counter with genuine concern for Maya's well-being, rather than any desire to test her observations about potential hidden background. "How are you holding up in these conditions?" Stone asked, noting the perspiration that made Maya's shirt cling uncomfortably to her frame. Maya looked up with the same professional composure she maintained regardless of circumstances. "Managing well, ma'am. The iced coffee selections are popular today." Stone accepted a cold beverage and studied Maya's face, noting the signs of heat stress that Maya was working to minimize. "Have you been taking adequate breaks? These conditions are challenging even for personnel accustomed to extreme environments." "I'm fine, ma'am. The evening shift will provide relief soon." The Admiral's experience with military personnel had taught her to recognize when someone was pushing through discomfort that exceeded normal limits. Maya was clearly suffering from the heat, but was determined not to show weakness or request accommodation. This attitude was consistent with military training that emphasized mission completion regardless of personal comfort. Stone was about to suggest that Maya take a mandatory break when the building's emergency ventilation system suddenly activated, creating a powerful downdraft that caught Maya's loose-fitting shirt and pulled it tight against her back. For just a moment, the outline of something beneath the fabric became visible, something that made Admiral Stone freeze in recognition. Even through the fabric, the shape was unmistakable to someone with Stone's background in special operations. The distinctive outline of a rifle scope, the angular geometry of crosshairs, the precise symmetry that could only represent one thing. Maya was wearing a sniper's crosshairs tattoo positioned exactly where a special operations marksman would place such a marking. Stone had seen similar tattoos before, always on personnel from the most elite military units, always representing confirmed kills in combat situations. The placement on Maya's upper spine was particularly significant as it indicated someone who had operated at the highest levels of precision shooting, someone whose marksmanship had been tested under the most extreme conditions. The moment lasted only seconds before Maya's shirt returned to its normal position, but it was enough for Stone to understand that her earlier suspicions about Maya's background had been dramatically understated. This wasn't simply a former military member working in civilian food service. This was potentially one of the most highly trained marksmen in the world, someone whose skills represented years of specialized training and combat experience. Stone maintained her composure despite the shock of recognition, but her mind was racing through the implications of what she'd observed. Why would someone with elite sniper qualifications be working as a food service contractor? What circumstances had led to such a dramatic change in career path? Most importantly, did Maya's presence on the base represent an opportunity or a security concern? "I should let you get back to your work," Stone said, her voice carefully neutral despite the revelation she'd just experienced. "Stay hydrated in this heat." Maya nodded her thanks for the concern, apparently unaware that her carefully guarded secret had been exposed by a moment of environmental chance. She returned to her beverage preparation while Stone walked away, her mind processing the significance of what she'd learned. Admiral Stone's immediate concern was determining whether Maya's concealed background represented a threat to base security or simply a personal history that she preferred to keep private. The tattoo suggested extraordinary military training, but it didn't necessarily indicate hostile intent or deceptive purposes. However, the level of deception required to hide such significant qualifications raised questions that needed answers. Stone made her way directly to Lieutenant Commander Chin's office, knowing that the intelligence officer would need to be briefed immediately about this development. Chun's earlier observations about Maya's behavior patterns would now make perfect sense in light of what Stone had discovered. "We need to discuss the civilian contractor you've been monitoring," Stone said without preamble when she entered Chun's office. "I've just confirmed that your suspicions were justified." Chun looked up from her computer with immediate attention. "What did you discover?" "She's former military, almost certainly special operations. I observed a sniper tattoo that indicates advanced marksmanship training and probable combat experience." The revelation hit Chun like a physical blow. Her months of careful observation suddenly made perfect sense. Maya's situational awareness, stress management, and environmental control weren't the result of exceptional customer service training. They were the habits of someone who had been trained to operate in hostile environments where observation and adaptation meant survival. "That explains everything I've been noticing," Chun said, reaching for Maya's employment file. "The behavioral patterns, the physical conditioning, the way she manages complex situations under pressure." Stone sat down across from Chun's desk. "What concerns me is the level of deception involved. Someone with her apparent qualifications doesn't accidentally end up in food service work. This assignment was chosen deliberately, which raises questions about her motivations." Chun had been thinking along similar lines. Either she's hiding from something in her past, or she's here for reasons that aren't reflected in her employment file. The two officers spent the next hour reviewing everything they knew about Maya's behavior, background, and performance since arriving at the base. The accumulated evidence painted a picture of someone with extraordinary training and capabilities, who was working very hard to appear unremarkable. Stone's discovery of the sniper tattoo provided the missing piece that explained all of Chun's observations, but it also raised new questions about Maya's true identity and purpose. A comprehensive background investigation would be necessary to determine whether Maya represented a security asset or a potential threat. "I want a complete intelligence workup," Stone instructed Chen. "Full background investigation through all available channels. I need to know who she really is, where her training came from, and why she's here." Chun nodded her understanding. "How do you want to handle her current status? Should we restrict her access or place her under surveillance?" Stone considered the question carefully. Maya had shown no signs of hostile intent or inappropriate behavior during her months at the base. Her work performance had been exemplary, and her interactions with personnel had been consistently professional. Restricting her access based solely on concealed qualifications might be premature. Continue normal operations for now, but implement discreet monitoring. "I want to know her patterns, her contacts, her activities outside of work hours. If she's here for legitimate reasons, we'll determine that through investigation. If she's not, we'll be prepared to respond appropriately." The investigation that Chun initiated would take several days to complete, but it would reveal information that would fundamentally change how everyone understood Maya's presence at Naval Station Coronado. The results would show that the quiet coffee server had a military record that read like something from a classified operations manual. While Admiral Stone and Lieutenant Commander Chun began their investigation, Maya continued her daily routine, unaware that her secret had been discovered. The heat wave continued for the rest of the week, but she maintained her full uniform coverage regardless of the discomfort, determined not to risk another accidental exposure. Her work performance remained consistent despite the challenging environmental conditions. She adapted her beverage offerings to better serve personnel dealing with the heat, stayed hydrated herself, and somehow managed to maintain her usual efficiency and situational awareness even when the temperature made concentration difficult. Ensign Kim noticed that Maya seemed more subdued than usual during the heat wave, though he attributed this to the physical stress of working in such conditions. "Are you doing okay?" he asked one afternoon when accepting his iced coffee. "These temperatures are brutal for everyone." Maya's smile was tired but genuine. "I'm managing fine, sir. The weather should break soon." What Kim didn't realize was that Maya's subdued mood had less to do with the heat, and more to do with a growing sense that her carefully maintained anonymity was beginning to erode. She'd noticed Admiral Stone's return to the base, had observed the increased attention from certain personnel, and had detected subtle changes in how some people interacted with her. Her training had taught her to recognize when operational security was compromised, and while her current situation wasn't a military operation, the same principles applied. Too much attention, too many questions, too many people looking for patterns could lead to exposure of information she wasn't prepared to share. Maya had chosen her assignment at Naval Station Coronado precisely because it offered the opportunity to serve in a military environment while maintaining a low profile. Food service work provided purpose and structure without requiring her to disclose the parts of her background that were too painful or too classified to discuss with civilian colleagues. The tattoo on her spine represented more than just military service or specialized training. It represented specific events, specific people, specific moments that had defined her life in ways that couldn't be explained to people who hadn't shared similar experiences. Keeping that history private wasn't about deception or security concerns. It was about emotional survival and the need to build a new identity that didn't depend on past achievements or sacrifices. But privacy was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain as more people began paying attention to details they'd previously overlooked. Maya could feel the weight of observation, the sense that her behavior was being analyzed and compared to expectations for civilian food service personnel. The investigation that Admiral Stone had ordered would soon provide answers to the questions that Maya's presence had raised. When those answers came, they would reveal a story of service and sacrifice that went far beyond what anyone at the base had imagined. They would also force Maya to confront whether her attempts to remain invisible were ultimately sustainable, or whether her past would inevitably catch up with her carefully constructed present. Lieutenant Commander Chun's investigation into Maya Rodriguez's background required accessing databases and classification levels that went well beyond routine personnel screening. The request for information had been submitted through intelligence channels with Admiral Stone's authorization, indicating that this was a priority investigation with potential security implications. The first results arrived via encrypted communication 3 days after Chun submitted her request. What she found in the initial reports made her understand why Maya had been so careful to conceal her true background. The woman serving coffee in their mess hall wasn't just former military. She was former elite special operations with a service record that was almost entirely classified above Chun's normal clearance level. Maya Elena Rodriguez, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance. 5 deployments to classified locations. Advanced School of Infantry graduate. Scout Sniper School, Honor graduate. Advanced Marksman Instructor certification. Multiple commendations for actions under fire. Medical discharge following combat injuries sustained during a classified operation. The basic facts were impressive enough, But Chun knew that the classified portions of Maya's record would contain the details that truly explained her exceptional capabilities. Force Reconnaissance represented the Marine Corps' most elite reconnaissance and Special Operations Unit, and Scout Sniper qualification indicated training at the highest levels of precision marksmanship. Chun printed the available information and prepared a briefing folder for Admiral Stone, knowing that the Admiral would want to review the findings immediately. The investigation had confirmed Stone's recognition of the sniper tattoo while revealing that Maya's background was even more extraordinary than either of them had suspected. Admiral Stone reviewed Chun's briefing materials with growing amazement at the depth of Maya's qualifications and the significance of her concealed service record. Force Reconnaissance Marines operated at the same level as Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces, and other elite units. Scout Sniper qualification required not only exceptional marksmanship skills, but also advanced training in reconnaissance, surveillance, and long-range precision shooting. This explains everything we've observed about her behavior, Stone said. After reviewing the available records, the situational awareness, the stress management, the ability to operate effectively under pressure. She's been trained at the highest levels of military special operations. Chun nodded agreement. What I don't understand is why someone with her qualifications is working in food service. Her record suggests she could have any number of positions in law enforcement, private security, or military contracting. Stone had been wondering the same thing. The transition from elite special operations to civilian food service represented such a dramatic change that it suggested significant circumstances that weren't reflected in the available records. Her discharge was medical, Stone noted, pointing to the relevant section of Maya's file. Combat injuries sustained during the classified operation. There might be physical limitations that prevented her from continuing in her field. Or psychological factors, Chun added. Special operations personnel sometimes struggle with transition to civilian life, especially after traumatic events. Both explanations were possible, and either would justify Maya's desire to maintain privacy about her background. Military personnel who had served in elite units often found that their specialized training didn't translate easily to civilian employment, and those who had been injured or traumatized during service sometimes needed time and space to rebuild their lives. What's our next step? Chun asked. Do we approach her directly or continue monitoring? Stone considered the options carefully. Maya had shown no signs of inappropriate behavior or security concerns during her months at the base. Her work performance had been exemplary. Her interactions with personnel had been professional, and her presence had actually improved operations in the mess hall. Approaching her directly might be interpreted as harassment or discrimination. Based on her military background, I want to review the rest of her file before making any decisions about direct contact, Stone said. There might be additional information that explains her current situation or provides guidance about appropriate interaction. Chun's investigation had revealed the basic facts about Maya's military service, but the most significant details remained classified above their normal access levels. To get a complete picture of Maya's background and the circumstances that had led to her medical discharge, they would need authorization to review classified operational records. Admiral Stone had the authority to request access to those records, but doing so would create an official trail that might draw unwanted attention to Maya's situation. If Maya was simply trying to rebuild her life after military service, such scrutiny could be counterproductive or even harmful. Let me make some discreet inquiries through special operations channels, Stone decided. I have contacts who might be able to provide context about her service without creating official documentation. The inquiries that Admiral Stone made through her network of special operations contacts would reveal information that explained not only Maya's exceptional qualifications, but also the circumstances that had led to her current assignment. The story that emerged would be one of extraordinary service, devastating loss, and the quiet courage required to rebuild a life after sacrifice. While Admiral Stone pursued additional information about Maya's background, the subject of their investigation continued her daily routine without apparent awareness that her secret had been discovered. The heat wave had finally broken, allowing normal operations to resume throughout the base. But Maya maintained the same careful behavior patterns that had characterized her work from the beginning. Petty Officer Torres conducted another routine inspection of food service operations, noting that Maya's performance had remained consistently excellent, despite the challenging environmental conditions of the previous week. Maya's ability to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining service quality was remarkable, though Torres was beginning to understand that such adaptability reflected training that went far beyond customer service management. "You handled the heat wave very professionally," Torres mentioned during her inspection. "A lot of contractors struggled with the conditions, but you maintained normal operations throughout." Maya accepted the compliment with her usual quiet grace. The base personnel needed consistent service during a difficult period. "That's what we're here to provide." Her response reflected the kind of mission-focused thinking that characterized military special operations personnel. Rather than viewing the heat wave as an inconvenience or challenge to her personal comfort, Maya had seen it as an operational requirement that needed to be met regardless of conditions. Torres completed her inspection and submitted another positive report about Maya's performance, adding to the accumulated documentation of exceptional competence and professionalism. The reports were routine administrative records, but they provided additional evidence of capabilities that exceeded normal expectations for civilian food service personnel. What Torres and other base personnel didn't realize was that their positive evaluations of Maya's work were creating an administrative trail that highlighted exactly the kind of exceptional performance that Maya was trying to avoid. Her attempts to remain unremarkable were actually making her more remarkable to anyone who paid attention to performance metrics and evaluation reports. The contradiction between Maya's desire for anonymity and her inability to perform at less than exceptional levels was becoming increasingly apparent to the people who were now looking for such patterns. Her military training had instilled habits of excellence and mission completion that couldn't be easily suppressed, even when those habits drew unwanted attention. Admiral Stone's inquiries through special operations channels were beginning to yield information that provided context for Maya's current situation. The contacts Stone reached out to were bound by classification restrictions, but they were able to provide general guidance about Maya's service record and the circumstances surrounding her medical discharge. What Stone learned was that Maya had been involved in a classified operation that had gone catastrophically wrong, resulting in significant casualties among her unit and severe injuries that had ended her military career. The operation had been successful in achieving its strategic objectives, but the personal cost to the personnel involved had been devastating. Maya's injuries had been both physical and psychological, requiring extensive treatment and rehabilitation before she was able to function effectively in civilian life. Her transition out of military service had been complicated by the classified nature of her work, which limited her ability to discuss her experience or seek support from normal veteran services. The information helped Admiral Stone understand why Maya had chosen to work in a position that kept her connected to the military environment while allowing her to maintain privacy about her background. Food service work provided structure, purpose, and contact with military personnel without requiring her to explain or justify her qualifications. Stone also learned that Maya's current assignment wasn't accidental. She had specifically requested work at military installations where her background would be less likely to draw attention and where she could serve military personnel without having to discuss her own military experience. This information changed Stone's perspective on Maya's presence at Naval Station Coronado. Rather than representing a security concern or mysterious anomaly. Maya was a decorated veteran who was trying to rebuild her life through quiet service to the military community. Her concealment of her background was motivated by personal healing rather than deceptive intent. Armed with this understanding, Admiral Stone faced a decision about how to proceed. Maya had earned the right to privacy about her military service, especially given the traumatic circumstances that had ended her career. At the same time, her exceptional qualifications represented a potential asset that could benefit the base and the personnel she served. The question was whether acknowledging Maya's background would be helpful or harmful to her recovery and adaptation to civilian life. Stone would need to consider not only the operational benefits of recognizing Maya's qualifications, but also the personal impact such recognition might have on someone who is clearly still healing from significant trauma. The decision would ultimately be made not by Admiral Stone, but by circumstances beyond anyone's control. An emergency situation would soon arise that would require Maya to choose between maintaining her anonymity and using her specialized skills to help others. When that moment came, the choice she made would reveal not only her true capabilities but also the character that had earned her the respect of the special operations community. The morning of August 15th brought news that would test everyone at Naval Station Coronado in ways they hadn't anticipated. A commercial fishing vessel had gone missing off the coast with 6 civilians aboard, including a family with 2 young children. The Coast Guard had initiated search and rescue operations, but initial efforts had been hampered by equipment failures and communication problems. Naval Station Coronado had been requested to provide support for the search operation, including personnel with specialized reconnaissance and observation capabilities. The missing vessel's last known position was in an area with challenging terrain and limited access, requiring searchers with advanced training in observation and target identification. Lieutenant Commander Chun had been assigned to coordinate the base's contribution to the search effort, which meant identifying personnel with appropriate qualifications for reconnaissance operations in difficult conditions. The requirements included advanced observation skills, experience with long-range identification, and the ability to operate effectively in challenging environmental conditions. Chun reviewed the available personnel roster, looking for individuals with the specialized training needed for the search operation. Most of the base personnel had general military training, but the specific requirements for this mission demanded expertise that wasn't common among administrative and support staff. As Chun compiled her list of qualified personnel, she couldn't help thinking about Maya Rodriguez and the extraordinary qualifications that had been revealed through Admiral Stone's investigation. Maya's force reconnaissance background and scout sniper training would make her ideal for this type of operation, but approaching her would require acknowledging knowledge of her concealed military background. The ethical implications of the situation were complex. Maya had clearly chosen civilian employment to avoid being placed in situations that required her to use her military training. Asking her to participate in a search and rescue operation would violate the privacy she had worked to maintain and potentially force her to confront aspects of her past that she wasn't ready to address. At the same time, 6 civilians were missing at sea, including children whose lives might depend on finding them quickly. Maya's specialized skills could make the difference between a successful rescue and a tragedy that would haunt everyone involved. Chun brought the dilemma to Admiral Stone, knowing that the decision about approaching Maya would ultimately rest with the senior officer. Stone would need to balance respect for Maya's privacy against the operational requirements of a life or death situation. How critical are her specific qualifications for this mission? Stone asked after Chun explained the situation. Scout sniper training includes advanced observation and target identification skills that would be extremely valuable for search operations in challenging terrain. Chun replied. Her force reconnaissance background means she's experienced with long-range reconnaissance in hostile environments. Stone understood the implications. Maya's training would allow her to identify objects and people at distances and in conditions that would challenge less experienced observers. In a search and rescue operation where timing was critical, such capabilities could mean the difference between life and death for the missing civilians. "What's the current status of the search effort?" Stone asked. Chun checked her latest updates from the Coast Guard Coordination Center. Limited progress due to equipment problems and adverse weather conditions. They need additional reconnaissance assets with advanced observation capabilities. The situation was becoming more urgent as time passed. The missing vessel had been overdue for more than 12 hours, and weather conditions in the search area were deteriorating. Every hour of delay reduced the chances of finding the civilians alive. Stone made her decision based on the operational requirements and the potential to save lives. Approach her, explain the situation, and ask if she's willing to volunteer her expertise. Make it clear that participation is entirely voluntary and that her decision will be respected regardless of her choice. Chun understood the delicate nature of the task. She would need to acknowledge Maya's military background while respecting her desire for privacy. Explain the urgent need for her skills while making it clear that she was free to decline, and provide enough information about the mission to allow Maya to make an informed decision. The conversation would force Maya to choose between the anonymity she had carefully maintained and the opportunity to use her specialized training to help save lives. The choice she made would reveal whether her concealment of her background was motivated primarily by personal healing or by a desire to completely separate herself from her military past. Chun found Maya in the mess hall during the lunch preparation period, working with her usual quiet efficiency despite the tension that seemed to permeate the base as news of the missing vessel spread among personnel. Maya looked up as Chun approached, her expression showing immediate awareness that this wasn't a routine interaction. "Ms. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you privately about an urgent matter," Chun said, indicating a quiet corner of the dining area where they could talk without being overheard. Maya followed Chun to the indicated area, her posture and movement already showing the increased alertness that suggested she sensed the significance of whatever Chun needed to discuss. "We're aware of your military background," Chun began, deciding that direct honesty was the best approach. "Your force reconnaissance and scout sniper qualifications." Maya's expression didn't change, but Chun could see the immediate tension in her posture as she processed the implications of this revelation. Her carefully maintained secret had been discovered, and now she faced the consequences of that exposure. "We have a search and rescue situation that could benefit from your specialized skills," Chun continued. 6 civilians missing at sea, including children. The search effort needs personnel with advanced observation and reconnaissance capabilities. Maya was quiet for a long moment, her mind clearly processing not only the request, but also the fact that her military background was no longer secret. The choice she faced involved more than just participating in a rescue operation. It meant choosing whether to acknowledge her past and accept the changes that such acknowledgement would bring to her carefully constructed present. "This is entirely voluntary," Chun emphasized. "Your decision will be respected regardless of what you choose. We're asking because your qualifications could make a difference in finding these people alive." The weight of the decision settled over Maya as she considered the implications of both choices available to her. Participating in the search operation would mean acknowledging her military training and accepting that her anonymity at the base was permanently ended. Declining would mean potentially allowing her concealed capabilities to remain unused when they might save lives. Maya's response would reveal not only her willingness to help in an emergency, but also her readiness to confront the military identity she had been working to leave behind. The choice would determine whether she was prepared to integrate her past training with her present circumstances, or whether her healing process required continued separation from her special operations background. When Maya finally spoke, her answer would change everything about her situation at Naval Station Coronado and set in motion events that would transform how everyone understood the nature of service, sacrifice, and the hidden strength that some people carry within them. Maya stood motionless for nearly 30 seconds, her dark eyes focused on something beyond Lieutenant Commander Chun's shoulder as she processed the magnitude of what had just been requested. The mess hall continued its normal operations around them, but Maya felt as though she existed in a separate space where time moved differently and decisions carried weight that could reshape everything she had built over the past 3 months. "How long do I have to decide?" Maya asked finally, her voice steady despite the internal turbulence Chun's request had created. "The search coordination meeting is in 20 minutes, Chun replied. "If you're willing to participate, we need to brief you on the situation and get you equipped for the operation." Maya nodded slowly, understanding that this wasn't a decision she could postpone or avoid. 6 people were missing, including children, and her specialized training could contribute to finding them alive. The rational part of her mind had already accepted that she would participate, but the emotional cost of abandoning her carefully maintained anonymity felt overwhelming. "I'll need to arrange coverage for my shift," Maya said, making the choice that Chun had hoped for but hadn't dared to expect. Chun felt a wave of relief that was immediately followed by concern for what this decision would cost Maya personally. "I'll handle the shift coverage. Report to Conference Room Alpha in 15 minutes for mission briefing." As Chun walked away to make the necessary arrangements, Maya remained in the quiet corner of the mess hall, preparing herself mentally for the transition from civilian food service worker to military reconnaissance specialist. The change wouldn't just be professional but psychological, requiring her to access parts of her training and experience that she had been working to compartmentalize. Maya returned to her station to secure her work area and brief her supervisor about the emergency assignment, though she provided only the minimal information necessary to ensure continuity of operations. Her movements were more purposeful now, reflecting the mental shift that had already begun as she prepared to operate in a capacity she hadn't used since her medical discharge. Senior Chief Martinez approached as Maya was completing her station. "Shut down. I heard you're being pulled for the search operation. Is there anything you need from base resources?" Maya looked at him with an expression that seemed different somehow, more focused and intense than he'd seen during her months of food service work. "I'll need to coordinate with the operation commander about equipment and communication requirements." Martinez nodded, but he was struck by the change in Maya's demeanor and the professional language she was using to discuss operational matters. The transformation suggested familiarity with military operations that went well beyond what he would have expected from a civilian contractor. "Good luck out there," Martinez said. "Bring those people home safe." Maya's response was a single nod that carried more gravity than her usual polite acknowledgments. She was already transitioning into the mindset that had characterized her most challenging military assignments, where personal concerns became secondary to mission requirements, and successful completion meant the difference between life and death. Conference Room Alpha was typically used for classified briefings and sensitive operational planning, reflecting the serious nature of the search and rescue mission that was being organized. Maya entered the room to find Admiral Stone, Lieutenant Commander Chun, and several other personnel she didn't recognize, including individuals whose bearing suggested special operations or intelligence backgrounds. Admiral Stone looked up as Maya entered, her expression showing both professional appreciation for Maya's willingness to participate and personal concern for the emotional impact this assignment might have on someone who was clearly still recovering from military trauma. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," Stone said, using Maya's military rank for the first time since her true identity had been discovered. Thank you for volunteering your expertise for this operation. The use of her military rank felt simultaneously natural and jarring to Maya, representing an acknowledgement of her true qualifications while forcing her to confront the identity she had been trying to leave behind. She responded with the crisp professionalism that had characterized her military service. "Ready for briefing, ma'am." Chun activated the conference room's display system and began presenting the operational details that had been coordinated with Coast Guard and other agencies involved in the search effort. The missing vessel was a 40-foot fishing boat with 6 civilians aboard, including 2 adults, 2 teenagers, and 2 children under 10 years old. The boat's last known position was approximately 15 nautical miles offshore in an area characterized by rocky coastline, challenging currents, and limited visibility due to persistent fog banks. Initial search efforts by Coast Guard aircraft and vessels had been hampered by equipment malfunctions and deteriorating weather conditions. Current search efforts are focusing on this grid pattern, Chun explained, highlighting areas on the maritime chart displayed on the screen. However, limited visibility and rough seas are preventing effective observation from standard search platforms. Maya studied the chart carefully, her trained eye automatically analyzing the terrain features, current patterns, and environmental factors that would affect both the missing vessel's likely position and the effectiveness of various search strategies. Her force reconnaissance background had included extensive training in maritime operations and coastal reconnaissance. "What's the last verified communication from the vessel?" Maya asked, her questions reflecting the systematic approach to information gathering that characterized special operations planning. "Radio contact was lost at approximately 0330 hours," replied Commander Patricia Walsh, the Coast Guard liaison officer who had joined the briefing. The transmission indicated they were experiencing engine problems and were attempting to anchor in sheltered water. Maya processed this information while continuing to study the maritime chart, identifying potential locations where a disabled vessel might seek shelter and the vantage points that would provide optimal observation of those areas. Her scout sniper training had emphasized the importance of selecting positions that maximized observation capability while minimizing exposure to environmental hazards. "Recommended observation posts?" Admiral Stone asked, recognizing that Maya's specialized training would allow her to identify positions that might not be obvious to personnel without advanced reconnaissance experience. Maya approached the chart and indicated several locations along the coastline that would provide overlapping fields of observation, covering the most likely areas where the missing vessel might be located. Her selections considered factors including elevation, concealment, accessibility, and communication capability. These positions would allow comprehensive observation of the primary search area while maintaining communication with search coordination, Maya explained. The terrain features provide natural concealment and protection from weather conditions. Commander Walsh studied Maya's recommendations with growing appreciation for the tactical sophistication of her analysis. "How quickly could you establish observation from these positions?" "Depends on transportation and equipment availability," Maya replied. "With appropriate support, initial observation posts could be established within 2 hours. The timeline was aggressive but achievable with proper coordination, and it represented a significant improvement over the current search capabilities that were being limited by weather and equipment problems." Maya's plan would provide detailed observation of areas that couldn't be effectively covered by aircraft or surface vessels. Admiral Stone made the decision to implement Maya's recommendations immediately. "What do you need in terms of equipment and support personnel?" Maya's response reflected the comprehensive planning approach that had characterized her most successful military operations. High-powered optics, weather protection gear, communication equipment compatible with search coordination frequencies, and transportation to the observation sites. The equipment list was specific and professional, indicating that Maya had already formulated a complete operational plan based on the briefing information. Her ability to transition quickly from civilian food service worker to military operational planner was remarkable, though it also suggested that her specialized training was never far from the surface, despite her attempts to live a civilian life. Equipment procurement is authorized, Stone decided. Lieutenant Commander Chun will coordinate support requirements. Maya nodded her understanding and began mentally preparing for the transition to field operations that would require her to function at levels of performance she hadn't accessed since her medical discharge. The physical and psychological demands of the mission would test whether her recovery had progressed sufficiently to allow effective use of her specialized skills. Within an hour, Maya was equipped with military-grade observation equipment and weather gear that represented significant improvement over standard civilian search and rescue resources. The equipment felt familiar in her hands, triggering muscle memory and procedural knowledge that had been developed through years of training and operational experience. The transportation to the first observation site was provided by base helicopter, allowing rapid deployment to positions that would have required hours to reach by ground transportation. As the aircraft lifted off from Naval Station Coronado, Maya experienced the familiar combination of focus and anticipation that had characterized the beginning of her most important military missions. The coastline below looked different from her elevated perspective, revealing terrain features and potential observation positions that weren't apparent from ground level. Maya's trained eye automatically cataloged reference points, escape routes, and communication positions that would be relevant if the search operation encountered unexpected complications. The first observation post was established on a rocky promontory that provided unobstructed views of approximately 30 square miles of ocean surface and coastline. Maya's selection of the position demonstrated the tactical expertise that had made her successful as a force reconnaissance marine, considering factors that civilian searchers might overlook. Maya deployed her observation equipment with the systematic precision that had been drilled into her during scout sniper training. The high-powered spotting scope was positioned to maximize visibility while remaining concealed from casual observation, and communication equipment was tested to ensure reliable contact with search coordination. The methodical approach to establishing the observation post reflected training that emphasized thoroughness and attention to detail as essential elements of successful reconnaissance operations. Maya's movements were economical and purposeful, with no wasted motion or unnecessary activity that might compromise the position's effectiveness. Once the equipment was operational, Maya began the systematic observation pattern that would continue for as long as the search operation required her presence. The process involved scanning designated sectors of the search area in overlapping patterns designed to ensure that no potential sightings were missed due to environmental conditions or observer fatigue. The first 2 hours of observation yielded negative results, with no signs of the missing vessel or its occupants visible within Maya's assigned search sector. However, Maya's training had emphasized patience and persistence as essential qualities for successful reconnaissance, and she maintained focus despite the lack of immediate results. The weather conditions that had been hampering other search efforts actually worked to Maya's advantage in some respects. The fog banks that limited visibility for aircraft and surface vessels created a stable atmospheric environment that enhanced the effectiveness of her ground-based optical equipment. Maya's ability to operate effectively in challenging environmental conditions was one of the capabilities that distinguished elite military reconnaissance personnel from civilian search and rescue workers. Her training had included extensive experience with observation techniques in adverse weather, low visibility, and other conditions that would severely limit less specialized personnel. During the third hour of observation, Maya detected movement in a sector that had previously shown no activity. The initial sighting was subtle, just a variation in watercolor that might indicate debris or a partially submerged object, but her trained eye recognized the pattern as potentially significant. Maya adjusted her optics for maximum magnification and began systematic observation of the area where she had detected the anomaly. The process required patience and precision, as the environmental conditions made detailed observation challenging, even with high-quality equipment. After several minutes of focused observation, Maya confirmed that the anomaly was indeed man-made debris that appeared consistent with materials from a fishing vessel. The debris field suggested that the missing boat had experienced significant damage, but the pattern of distribution indicated that the incident had occurred relatively recently. Maya immediately reported her findings to search coordination, providing precise coordinates and detailed descriptions of the observed debris. Her military training had emphasized the importance of accurate and comprehensive reporting, as decisions about resource allocation and search priorities would be based on her observations. The Coast Guard responded to Maya's report by redirecting surface vessels and aircraft to the area she had identified, while Maya continued observation to provide real-time updates about conditions and any additional sightings. Her position provided a perspective that complemented the capabilities of the mobile search assets. Within 30 minutes of Maya's initial debris sighting, Coast Guard vessels had located additional debris that confirmed the area as the site of the incident involving the missing fishing boat. The discovery represented a significant breakthrough in the search effort, but it also raised urgent questions about the fate of the 6 civilians who had been aboard the vessel. Maya maintained continuous observation of the search area as Coast Guard divers and specialized recovery personnel worked to locate any survivors or additional evidence about what had happened to the missing people. Her elevated position provided oversight capability that was essential for coordinating the complex search operation. The systematic search of the debris field revealed that the fishing vessel had been severely damaged, but there were no immediate signs of the 6 civilians who had been aboard when the boat went missing. Maya's observation continued to provide valuable information about current patterns and environmental conditions that affected the search effort. After 4 hours of intensive searching in the debris field area, Coast Guard personnel located an emergency life raft that had been deployed from the missing vessel. The raft was partially inflated and showed signs of recent use, suggesting that at least some of the missing civilians had survived the initial incident. Maya's observation post provided optimal visibility of the area where the life raft had been discovered, allowing her to coordinate with search vessels and provide real-time information about conditions that might affect the location of any survivors. Her training in maritime survival techniques helped her understand the likely behavior patterns of civilians in emergency situations. The discovery of the life raft energized the search effort and provided hope that the missing civilians might still be alive despite the evidence of significant damage to their vessel. Maya continued her systematic observation while search coordinators developed plans for expanding the search to areas where survivors might have drifted with the currents. Maya's analysis of current patterns and environmental conditions suggested several areas where survivors in a life raft might be located based on the time elapsed since the initial incident. Her recommendations were based on training that included detailed study of maritime survival scenarios and the factors that affected the movement of emergency equipment in ocean environments. The expanded search based on Maya's analysis led to the deployment of additional aircraft and surface vessels to areas that had not been included in the initial search grid. Maya's specialized knowledge was proving invaluable for optimizing the allocation of search resources and maximizing the probability of locating any survivors. As afternoon turned to evening, Maya had been maintaining continuous observation for more than 6 hours without break, demonstrating the physical and mental endurance that had been developed during her military training. Her focus remained sharp despite the demanding conditions and the emotional weight of knowing that lives depended on the effectiveness of her observations. The breakthrough came just as natural light was beginning to fade and search coordinators were preparing to transition to night operations. Maya detected movement in a section of coastline that had been obscured by fog for most of the day, movement that appeared consistent with human activity rather than natural environmental phenomena. Maya increased magnification and adjusted her observation angle to get the clearest possible view of the area where she had detected the movement. Through her high-powered optics, she could see what appeared to be people on a small beach area that was accessible only by water and nearly invisible from other observation positions. The sighting was at the extreme range of Maya's optical equipment, requiring all of her training and experience to confirm that what she was observing was indeed the missing civilians rather than natural phenomena or other activity. Her scout sniper background had included extensive training in target identification at maximum ranges and in challenging conditions. After several minutes of careful observation, Maya was able to confirm that there were 6 people in the area. She had identified, including what appeared to be adults and children, consistent with the missing fishing boat crew. The group appeared to be in distress but mobile, suggesting that they had survived the incident and reached shore but were unable to signal for help. Maya's report of the survivor sighting triggered immediate response from all available search assets, with Coast Guard vessels and aircraft converging on the coordinates she provided. Her elevated observation position allowed her to guide the rescue forces to the exact location of the survivors while monitoring their condition and safety. The rescue operation that followed demonstrated the effectiveness of combining Maya's specialized observation capabilities with traditional search and rescue resources. Her ability to maintain continuous oversight of the operation while providing detailed information about environmental conditions and survivor status was essential for ensuring a successful outcome. The 6 civilians were successfully rescued from their position on the isolated beach, all alive though suffering from exposure and dehydration after spending more than 18 hours stranded following the loss of their vessel. The rescue was completed just as darkness fell, highlighting the critical importance of Maya's observation capabilities in locating the survivors before conditions made rescue operations impossible. Maya maintained her observation post until the rescue operation was complete and all survivors had been safely transferred to medical facilities for treatment. Her contribution to the successful outcome was acknowledged by search coordinators, but she was already preparing to return to her civilian role at Naval Station Coronado. The transportation back to the base provided Maya with time to process what had just occurred and to consider the implications of her return to military-style operations after months of civilian work. The mission had been successful, but it had also forced her to confront aspects of her training and identity that she had been trying to leave behind. Admiral Stone was waiting when Maya returned to Naval Station Coronado, ready to debrief the operation and to discuss the broader implications of Maya's participation in the search and rescue mission. The successful outcome had confirmed the value of Maya's specialized training, but it had also raised questions about her future role at the base. "Outstanding work out there," Stone said as Maya entered the debriefing room. "Your observation capabilities made the difference between a successful rescue and a potential tragedy." Maya nodded acknowledgement of the praise, but her expression suggested that she was still processing the emotional impact of returning to operational status after months of civilian employment. The mission had been successful, but it had also been a reminder of the capabilities she possessed and the responsibilities that came with those capabilities. "How are you feeling about the transition back to operational work?" Stone asked, recognizing that Maya's participation in the mission represented more than just professional competence, but also a significant psychological milestone in her recovery from military trauma. Maya considered her response carefully, understanding that her answer would influence how Admiral Stone and other base Personnel viewed her future role and responsibilities. The mission had demonstrated that her specialized training remained effective despite her medical discharge and civilian employment, but it had also reminded her of why she had chosen to leave military life. The mission was successful, and I'm glad we were able to save those people, Maya said finally. But I'm not sure I'm ready for regular operational assignments. Stone understood the complexity of Maya's situation and the personal courage it had required for her to participate in the search operation, despite her reservations about returning to military-style work. The successful outcome validated Maya's capabilities, but it didn't necessarily mean that she was prepared to abandon the civilian life she had been building. No one is suggesting that you should return to full operational status, Stone assured her. But your participation today demonstrated that your specialized skills represent a valuable resource that could benefit other emergency situations. Maya appreciated Stone's understanding of her situation, but she also recognized that her secret was now permanently exposed, and that her carefully maintained anonymity at the base was no longer possible. The successful search and rescue mission had revealed her true capabilities to everyone involved, fundamentally changing how she would be perceived by her colleagues. The debriefing session concluded with Stone's assurance that Maya would be allowed to return to her civilian food service role without pressure to accept additional operational assignments. However, both women understood that the dynamic at Naval Station Coronado had changed permanently as a result of Maya's participation in the rescue mission. Word of Maya's role in the successful search and rescue operation spread throughout Naval Station Coronado with the speed that characterized all significant news in military communities. By the following morning, everyone on the base knew that the quiet woman who served coffee in the mess hall was actually a decorated former Force Reconnaissance Marine with specialized training that had saved 6 lives. The reaction from base personnel was overwhelmingly positive, with expressions of respect and gratitude that reflected appreciation for both Maya's military service and her willingness to help in an emergency situation. However, the attention also represented exactly what Maya had been trying to avoid through her choice of civilian employment. Ensign Kim was among the first to approach Maya when she returned to work the following morning, his expression showing a mixture of amazement and respect that reflected the new understanding of who she really was. "I had no idea about your background," he said as she prepared his usual coffee order. "Thank you for everything you've done, both yesterday and during your military service." Maya accepted his thanks with the same quiet grace she had always shown, but she was clearly struggling with the increased attention and recognition that came with the exposure of her true identity. The anonymity that had allowed her to heal and rebuild was gone, replaced by a level of visibility that felt overwhelming. "I appreciate that," Maya replied, focusing on her work rather than meeting Kim's eyes directly. "I'm just glad the families are safe." Her response demonstrated the same focus on mission accomplishment over personal recognition that had characterized her military service, but it also revealed her continued discomfort with attention and praise. The psychological adjustment to her new status at the base would require time and support from her colleagues. Senior Chief Martinez approached Maya's station later that morning with an expression that mixed professional respect with personal concern for her well-being. As someone who had supervised many military personnel over his career, Martinez understood the challenges that veterans faced when transitioning between military and civilian roles. "I wanted to personally thank you for what you did yesterday," Martinez said. "But I also want you to know that nothing has to change about your work here unless you want it to change." Maya looked up from the coffee machine she was cleaning, meeting Martinez's eyes directly for the first time since her background had been revealed. "I appreciate that, Senior Chief. I chose this work because it allows me to serve without the complications that come with military assignments." Martinez nodded his understanding. Your choice to serve here is respected regardless of your qualifications. The base is lucky to have you in whatever capacity you're comfortable with." The conversation represented the kind of leadership and support that Maya needed as she adjusted to her new circumstances at the base. Martinez's assurance that her civilian role would be protected helped alleviate some of her concerns about being pressured to accept responsibilities she wasn't ready to handle. Throughout the morning, other personnel approached Maya with similar expressions of respect and gratitude, but also with an understanding that her participation in the rescue mission didn't necessarily mean she wanted to change her current role. The maturity of their responses reflected the kasum, professionalism of the military community, and their appreciation for the complexity of her situation. Lieutenant Commander Chen made a point of visiting the mess hall during her lunch break to check on Maya's adjustment to her new circumstances and to express the base command's appreciation for her contribution to the successful rescue operation. Chen's approach was careful and respectful, recognizing that Maya's heroism came with personal costs that needed to be acknowledged. "How are you handling the attention?" Chen asked during a quiet moment when other customers weren't nearby. Maya considered her response, recognizing that Chen's question reflected genuine concern rather than casual curiosity. "It's difficult, but I understand that people mean well. I just need time to adjust to being visible again." Chen appreciated Maya's honesty about the challenges she was facing and the courage it required to acknowledge those difficulties. "If you need any support or if the attention becomes overwhelming, please let me know. The base has resources available to help with transition issues." The offer of support was meaningful to Maya, representing recognition that her heroic actions didn't automatically solve the personal challenges she had been working to address through her civilian employment. The successful rescue mission had demonstrated her capabilities, but it had also exposed vulnerabilities that would require ongoing attention. As the days following the rescue operation passed, Maya gradually adjusted to her new status at Naval Station Coronado. The initial surge of attention and recognition began to settle into a more sustainable pattern of respect and appreciation that didn't require constant interaction or explanation. Maya continued her work in the mess hall with the same competence and professionalism that had characterized her performance from the beginning, but there were subtle changes in how she carried herself and how others interacted with her. The secret that had defined her civilian life was gone, replaced by open acknowledgement of her qualifications and service. The change wasn't entirely negative despite Maya's initial discomfort with the attention. Several base personnel mentioned that knowing about her background helped them understand and appreciate the quality of service she had been providing all along. Her competence wasn't surprising anymore, but it was respected in ways that hadn't been possible when her qualifications were hidden. Petty Officer Torres conducted another inspection of food service operations 2 weeks after the rescue mission, noting that Maya's performance remained consistently excellent despite the significant changes in her circumstances. Maya's ability to maintain professional standards while adapting to increased visibility demonstrated the resilience that had enabled her survival during military operations. "You seem to be adjusting well to the changes," Torres observed during the inspection. "Is there anything you need in terms of additional support or accommodation?" Maya appreciated the continued concern for her well-being and the recognition that her circumstances required ongoing attention rather than just temporary acknowledgement. "I'm managing well, thank you. The work continues to be meaningful." Her response reflected the fundamental reason why Maya had chosen her assignment at Naval Station Coronado and why she remained committed to her civilian role despite the changes that had occurred. The work provided purpose and connection to the military community without requiring her to fully return to the operational life she had left behind. Admiral Stone made a final visit to Naval Station Coronado 3 weeks after the rescue operation, partly to review the lessons learned from the successful search and rescue mission and partly to check on Maya's long-term adjustment to her changed Circumstances. Stone's interest in Maya's situation reflected both professional appreciation for her contributions and personal concern for her continued well-being. Maya was working her regular shift when Admiral Stone approached the coffee station, and their interaction demonstrated how much had changed since Stone's previous visits to the base. Maya's posture and bearing showed increased confidence, while Stone's approach reflected the respect due to someone who had demonstrated exceptional competence under pressure. "How are things going for you?" Stone asked as Maya prepared her coffee order. Maya's response showed the growth and healing that had occurred since her participation in the rescue mission. "Better than I expected, ma'am. The transition has been challenging, but manageable." Stone was pleased to see that. Maya appeared more comfortable with recognition and attention than she had immediately following the rescue operation. The adjustment process had been difficult, but it had also provided opportunities for healing and integration that might not have been possible while maintaining complete anonymity. "Any regrets about participating in the rescue?" Stone asked, recognizing that Maya's decision to use her specialized skills had required significant personal courage. Maya considered the question carefully, understanding that her answer reflected not only her current feelings but also her progress in reconciling her military past with her civilian present. "No regrets about helping those families. Some concerns about losing my anonymity, but I'm learning to adapt." Her response demonstrated the kind of balanced perspective that suggested successful psychological adjustment to changed circumstances. Maya had accepted the consequences of her decision to participate in the rescue while maintaining her commitment to her chosen path of civilian service. "Your example has inspired a lot of people here," Stone observed. "A combination of exceptional competence with quiet service resonates with military values in ways that people find meaningful." Maya nodded acknowledgement of the observation, though her expression suggested that inspiring others hadn't been among her goals when she chose to participate in the rescue operation. Her motivation had been focused on saving lives rather than demonstrating principles, but she recognized that her actions had communicated important messages about the nature of service and sacrifice. As Admiral Stone prepared to leave Naval Station Coronado, she reflected on the lessons that Maya's story had provided about the hidden strength and capability that existed within military communities. Maya's example demonstrated that exceptional service often came from unexpected sources, and that the most important contributions were frequently made by people who sought no recognition for their efforts. The successful rescue operation had saved 6 lives, but it had also revealed something important about the character and values that defined the military community. Maya's willingness to use her specialized skills, despite her desire for anonymity, represented the kind of selfless service that formed the foundation of military excellence. Maya continued her work at Naval Station Coronado with renewed purpose and increasing comfort with her role as both civilian employee and recognized veteran. The integration of her military identity with her civilian life had been challenging, but it had also provided opportunities for healing and growth that wouldn't have been possible while maintaining complete separation between her past and present. The coffee she served each morning carried additional meaning now, representing not just customer service, but connection between her current role and her commitment to supporting the military community. The work remained fundamentally the same, but her understanding of its significance had deepened through the recognition of how her past and present could work together rather than in opposition. 6 months after the rescue operation, Maya received news that the family whose lives she had helped save wanted to visit Naval Station Coronado to express their gratitude personally. The visit would represent another milestone in her adjustment to visibility and recognition, but it would also provide concrete evidence of the meaning and impact of her decision to participate in the search and rescue mission. Maya agreed to meet with the family, understanding that their gratitude represented more than just personal appreciation but acknowledgement of the broader community of service that connected military personnel with the civilians they protected. The meeting would be difficult emotionally, but it would also provide closure and validation for her choice to use her specialized training when lives were at stake. The family's visit to the base was arranged through official channels, with Admiral Stone and other personnel coordinating the meeting to ensure that it served the family's need to express gratitude while respecting Maya's comfort level with recognition and attention. The event would be meaningful for all participants while maintaining appropriate boundaries. When the meeting took place, Maya found herself face to face with the 6 people whose lives had been saved through her observation. Skills and military training. The parents, teenagers, and children who had survived 18 hours of uncertainty and fear because of her willingness to emerge from anonymity and contribute her specialized capabilities to the rescue effort. The gratitude expressed by the Tivoli family was profound and personal, reflecting their understanding that Maya's contribution had made the difference between their survival and a tragedy that would have devastated multiple families. Their appreciation was focused not just on her technical skills, but on her character and willingness to help strangers in crisis. Maya's response to their gratitude demonstrated the growth and healing that had occurred since her participation in the rescue operation. She was able to accept their thanks gracefully, while explaining her perspective on service and the responsibilities that came with specialized training and capabilities. "I'm grateful that we were able to find you and that everyone made it home safely," Maya told the family. "That's what matters most, and that's what makes all the training and preparation worthwhile." Her words reflected the values that had guided her throughout her military service and that continued to motivate her civilian work. The successful rescue had validated her decision to maintain connection with the military community, while also demonstrating that her specialized skills retained their value even outside of formal military operations. The family's visit concluded with their promise to remember Maya's contribution and to share their story as an example of the dedication and capability of military personnel, both active and veteran. Their gratitude would become part of Maya's healing process, providing concrete evidence that her service continued to have meaning and impact. As Maya returned to her daily routine following the family's visit, she carried with her a renewed understanding of the connections between her past military service, her current civilian work, and her future possibilities. The integration of her different identities had been challenging, but it had also provided opportunities for growth and service that wouldn't have been possible through complete separation or full return to military life. The story of Maya Rodriguez, the coffee girl who became a hero, continued to resonate throughout Naval Station Coronado as an example of the hidden strength that existed within military communities and the importance of recognizing and supporting the veterans who chose to continue serving in civilian capacities. Her example inspired others to look beyond surface appearances and to appreciate the depth of experience and capability that surrounded them in unexpected forms. Maya's daily work in the mess hall took on additional significance as personnel understood the background and training that informed her approach to service. The coffee she served each morning represented not just customer service, but connection to a broader tradition of military excellence and commitment that transcended formal rank structures and official recognition. The transformation of Maya's circumstances at Naval Station Coronado demonstrated that healing and service could coexist, that exceptional capability didn't require constant recognition, and that the most important contributions were often made by people who sought no personal benefit from their actions. Her story became part of the base's culture, inspiring others to consider how their own skills and experience could be used to benefit their community. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.